Ever since I moved to a new apartment last month, I've been seeing strange things following me at night. I get out from work at 10 at night and I have to walk 6 blocks to get home after getting off the bus. Most of the buildings in my area are either apartments or commercial buildings. Thus, they are tall, flat, and erect. When I get off the bus, and especially when there are no people around, the walls of the buildings dance at night. The shadows keep pace with me as they move from side to side, top to bottom. They never get too close to me, but it feels like they really want me to know that they exist. The other night, I had the audacity to approach the shadows. The courage mostly stemmed from my state of drunkenness. But nevertheless, I walked closer to the wall where the shadow people were moving about. I found it to be amusing that the shadows preferred to keep their distance from me. Every time I got closer, they moved further away. I regret what I did the next night because that night as I walked home, I could feel that the shadows had become more aggressive. I was not drunk and definitely wasn't trying to go near them. The thing is though, they approached me this time. It was akin to a game of chicken. They come closer and I would walk a bit faster. But then the next time they tried to intimidate me, I stood my ground by actually slowing down my steps, then they backed away. We continued playing the game of chicken all the way to my apartment. It was amusing and scary at the same time. The next night, I didn't challenge them and they too left me alone. We now walk home peacefully and don't get in each other's way. I'm gonna let them be and not try anything stupid. But I do wonder, what would actually happen if I touched one of them? As you know, there's one sure way to find out, but I don't believe I'll ever get that curious. It was about 3 in the morning and I had woken up in a stranger's home. The place belonged to a girl I had met at a bar. I was drunk, she didn't look any better, and we both wanted to get it on. So we ended up in our apartment doing the nasty. It didn't feel right being there. I mean, I didn't even know the girl's name. But at the same token, it seemed like a really rude thing to do just to leave without even saying goodbye. I think I've made it fairly obvious. Yes, this was my first ever one-night stand. In any event, I went to the bathroom to take a leak, but didn't want to go back to the bedroom. Hence, I decided I was going to spend the rest of the night on our couch. I lied down on the couch and it didn't take long until I fell asleep. That is, until I realized I was experiencing a sleep paralysis. I had this happen to me in the past, but back then, it was the experience of my mind being awake, but my body not following suit. This time around though, I could see what was happening all around me. It's just that I couldn't do anything else but watch. It's akin to having your eyes open forcibly while your body is tied up tightly. For a moment, I thought my vision must be obstructed with something because I couldn't see things clearly. However, some seconds thereafter, my visions cleared up and I was seeing a black figure basically sitting right on top of me. The shape of the figure was definitely humanoid, but it was made up of what I can only describe as black smoke or fog. As you might imagine, it scared the hell out of me. Not only was I seeing this bizarre thing sitting on top of my body, but I couldn't do anything about it. My body wouldn't respond no matter how much I willed that in my head. After some time, the thing pushed its hand onto my chest, and I'm telling you, I felt the pressure. My heart felt like it was about to explode, and I was having difficulty breathing. A couple of minutes must have passed, and I knew I was going to suffocate soon. I had never felt that desperate in my life. But then suddenly, the shadow dissipated into thin air and I woke up from someone gently slapping at my face. It was the girl from last night, my one-night stand, and by the way, her name's Christy. She came out to the living room after she heard me moan and struggle with something. Apparently, she often suffers from sleep paralysis and recognized the behavior. Her ex-boyfriend used to see her do the same and he would wake her up whenever she struggled like that. I explained to her in detail what had happened to me and specifically told her that this sleep paralysis was different from the past ones. After some discussion, it dawned on us that we had the same experience. I went through it just before she woke me up, and Christy has been experiencing sleep paralysis ever since she's moved to her current apartment. I told her to pack some clothes and suggested for her to stay in my apartment for some time. I know it's crazy to have a stranger move into your home, but I, more than anyone, understood what she was going through, and I couldn't ignore that. The good news is that neither of us had a single episode of sleep paralysis after staying at my place. That's the first good news. The second good news is that Christy is officially my girlfriend now. The experience has brought us closer together, and as they say, one thing led to another, and now we are a couple. Christy has moved out of her apartment, and we've been living under the same roof ever since. We both feel terrible that we can't warn the current tenant about the apartment and this secret. We spoke about it yesterday and thought maybe we could just knock on the door and tell them everything we know. At least that way, we've done what we could to help. I mean, the worst that can happen is for us to be looked at as complete lunatics. However, in the best case scenario, the tenant will be prepared for the nightmare that will surely ensue, and will likely move out when they realize we were telling the truth. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do that. In the summer of 1992, I was staying at my uncle's for 2 weeks while my parents were working out their differences. That's what they told me they were doing at the time, and they needed me out of the picture for a while. Obviously, they were having trouble in their marriage and were likely deciding on how to part ways. Anyhow, Mom dropped me off on a Tuesday, and I remember she looked really sad. Before leaving, she told me she was sorry and that she'd come back as soon as she could. As for Uncle Mason, he's an okay dude. He hardly speaks and is kind of a loner, but it's not because he's a bad person or because he doesn't care. Uncle had always been like that. He's not comfortable with people, but then he doesn't bother anyone either. So that, in my book, is totally fine. On the first night of staying at his place, I remember him asking me if he needed to read me a story or something similar to put me to sleep. Now mind you, I was 12 years old at the time. I said to him, "Uncle, I'm 12 years old and not 2. Don't get me wrong, I didn't say it in a demeaning manner. I had a smile on my face and I was only kidding with him. I can't say for sure, but I think I almost made him laugh. I might have seen the corner of his mouth move a little. That was kind of funny. But yeah, I couldn't fall asleep until midnight due to the concerns I had for my parents, and as well as for the fact that I wasn't sleeping in my room. I got up and went to the bathroom to take a piss. As I returned to the room, I left the door slightly ajar to let in a little bit of light from the hallway. I returned to bed, but still had my eyes open. I was looking out the window for a while when I felt a strange sensation that someone was watching me. I sat up and looked around the room, but there was no one. I was about to lie down again, but something by the door caught my eye. It seemed like Uncle was standing in the hallway and looking into my room. I got up, then went to the hallway, but Uncle wasn't there. I just stood there for a while, kinda puzzled at the situation. Then for a split of a second, I could have sworn I saw a shadow melt into a wall. The figure of the shadow looked humanoid and it moved fast. Believe it or not, I wasn't really scared. I had always been fascinated with the afterlife, spirits, demons, you name it. I've read a lot about those things, and I was an inquisitive kid. The happening, while kind of scary, it was a lot more exciting to me. The next night, when I went to bed, I pretended to fall asleep real quick and waited for the shadow person to come back. I must have waited for at least an hour when it reappeared by the door. I patiently waited, and this time it actually came into the room. I had the blanket covering most of my face, but left just enough room for one of my eyes to observe the being. Once it was inside the room, I could no longer tell where it was. The room was in total darkness, and the only lights coming in were from the window and from the door that was slightly ajar. About a minute later, I saw it. The shadow was hovering on top of me, and they looked to be watching me curiously. The moonlight was bright enough for me to distinguish the shape of the shadow in the darkness. Then suddenly, I heard a door opening out in the hallway and the shadow quickly disappeared. I thought that would be the end of the night, but it wasn't. Just seconds after the shadow had left, I heard Uncle talking to someone out in the hallway. It was too much of a coincidence for the shadow to leave my room as soon as Uncle came out of his room, and then for him to engage in a conversation with someone, even though there were only two of us in the house. I couldn't hear the conversation without alerting of my movement. The bed was too creaky for me to get up quietly. So till this day, I have no clue as to what Uncle must have said to the shadow being. But I am 100% certain that he did speak to it. The shadow person didn't come back after that night. I was very disappointed because I was hoping to find out more about the being. I never spoke to Uncle about the happening, and I've got no plans to do so now. I'm still curious, but as I gotten older, I come to realize that some things are better left unknown. This is one of them. Hey guys, Dennis here. I'm in Boston right now as I'm making this recording, but I'll be flying out to Louisiana tomorrow where I'll stay 2 days. After that, it's Texas, New Mexico, Montana, and back home. I've read all your comments on the new video and I just wanted to say thank you for all the kind words and your support, of course. I probably won't be able to respond to any comments while I'm on the road. There's just not enough time to split between my job and the making of the videos. But I do read all your comments, and as always, knowing that you guys continue to enjoy my contents is what keeps me going. I very much want you to know that. Oh, by the way, I've got a question, guys. I saw a stray kitten today and it was awfully emaciated. I gave it a couple of strips of beef jerky because that was all I had in my car. But then I googled that and it says that you're not supposed to feed cats flavored jerkies. The kitten ran away after I gave it the second strip of jerky, and I kind of feel bad now in case something happened to it. So if you own a cat and if you could tell me whether a couple of strips of jerky should be okay for a kitten to eat, please do let me know. I've been feeling awful about that, and I just wanted to hear from the cat owners that the kitty should be okay. I really hope so. Anywho guys, thanks for watching. Goodbye for now.